Does Den of Thieves 2 Pantera live up to the underrated bank robbery heist thriller from 2018? Here's my review of Den of Thieves 2 Pantera. Den of Thieves 2 Pantera is set directly after the original film, about 6 months or 1 year later after the original film. Big Nick is back, played by Gerard Butler, and he is on the hunt for the one that got away from the original film, Donnie, played by O'Shea Jackson Jr. Donnie is hiding out in Europe and has been hired to join a diamond heist gang called the Panther Mafia, headed by Giovanna, played by Evan Ahmad. Donnie and Giovanna, they steal some diamonds from a plane that's transporting some expensive items in Belgium, and that brings them to the attention of the media. And Big Nick sees this on the news and puts two and two together and thinks Donnie has something to do with it and travels to France. After this heist on the airplane, Donnie hides out in France and Big Nick manages to find him. And once he finds him, he says he wants to switch sides. He's broke, his family is falling apart, and he wants to switch sides. He wants to join the criminals and help Donnie with his next job. This next job is in the diamond exchange in France, in a bank that has very, very high security and that has many, many cameras, many, many security, and probably impossible to get into. But if they're successful, then there's upwards of $450 million worth of diamonds inside this vault, inside the bank, if they're successful. Donnie has managed to open an account and have an office inside this bank with some fake ID, but they need a police officer to help them get inside the bank to see all the inside outs of the bank so they can steal the diamonds. So that's where Big Nick, Gerard Butler, comes in. Giovanna lets him join the gang, and they start getting ready to rob this bank. Den of Thieves 2 Pantera is directed by Christian Gudegast, and this is his second film after the original Den of Thieves from 2018. Den of Thieves 2 is not as good as the original, but it is still a pretty solid heist thriller. But for me, heist movies are a little bit of a guilty pleasure for me. So if you're not a big enthusiast of heist movies, then probably this is kind of like been there before. So it might be a little bit dry for you, but for me, they're a bit of a guilty pleasure. And this one's a pretty solid one. The original Den of Thieves from 2018 is kind of like a Heat light kind of film, like a smaller version of Heat. Not as epic. And Den of Thieves 2 is kind of like a light version of Ronin from the Robert De Niro film from 1998. It's set in Europe. There's a gang of thieves that are headed by a female, and she recruits a whole bunch of criminals that have special skills, and they don't know each other, but they all have a special set of skills that they bring to the table. And there's action and there's car chases, so it's kind of like a light version of Ronin from 1998. It's a little bit different to the original Den of Thieves. The first 10-15 minutes of the film is that heist on the airplane, and then there's about an hour of setting up the heist, like kind of like scoping out the bank and trying to figure out how we're going to steal these diamonds, and then introducing everybody, all of the characters. And then the final hour of the film is the actual heist, and then the aftermath of that heist. I'm not going to give away what happens at the end of the film. There's some twists and turns throughout the film, but I just labeled this a mild spoiler review because I'm going to go into some of the details about the plot, just to explain what I didn't like about the film. The setting up of the plot, all the heist stuff in the film is very, very well done. The setting up, the investigation, the actual heist, it's very, very high tension. It's for the action towards the end of the film. There's some car chases and some gunplay towards the end of the film. That's very, very well done and very exciting. The performances are all pretty solid. Gerard Butler, he just plays Gerard Butler. He's not amazing. He just does an okay job. But I had a few problems with the film. The film just doesn't know when to end. The movie is about 2 hours and 5 minutes, and it just has about three endings. Like when you think, okay, this if the movie ended now, it would be perfect, but it just keeps going and going. It's another scene, another scene. The film is just so focused on setting up a sequel. The film is so focused on continuing the franchise that it has to keep going and just kind of leave something for us to look forward to for the next film. But I just thought the film just didn't know when to quit. And the film is probably just a little bit too long. There's this little subplot about because in the airplane heist, these Donnie and his crew, they steal some diamonds, and these diamonds belong to the Sicilian mafia. And there's this subplot where the Sicilian mafia, they catch up to Donnie and Big Nick, and they kidnap him and they dump them, and they said, "Oh, you need to find these diamonds, get them back for us." And then they dump them in the ocean and have to swim back to the ocean, and then they disappear for like 1 hour. And it's just like, okay, go find these diamonds, and then that's it. Like, we're not going to do anything to you. Just please find the diamonds, give them back to us, and where we're happy is like, okay. And I just think that subplot was just completely unnecessary. If they took out the whole mafia subplot in the film, it just would have been a lot snappier, a lot quicker, and just a lot shorter, and it just wasn't necessary to me. And the first half of the film, where we're setting up the heist, it just drags a little bit, but we're introduced to the characters. Like in a heist film, you don't need to know the characters. We just need to know what they're doing, what they're going to steal, how they're going to do it, what happens during the heist. I don't need to know who's divorced. I don't need to know who's ex-girlfriend. I don't need to know what their favorite music is. I don't need to know anything about you. I just need to know what you're going to steal. And just the first half of the film just sets up the characters too much. I don't need to know all this stuff. So I just thought all that exposition in the first half of the film just wasn't necessary. I give Den of Thieves to Pantera 3 stars out of 5. Den of Thieves 2 is not as good as the original, but it's still a pretty solid heist thriller, especially if you're a big fan of heist films. It just goes on a bit too long, has too much, drags on in the first half a little bit with too much character exposition, and the film just doesn't know when to quit. This just has too many endings, but I still recommend checking out Den of Thieves 2, especially if you're a big fan of heist films and if you're a big fan of the original Den of Thieves. Thanks for watching. What did you think of Den of Thieves 2? Did you think it was better than the first one? Please comment below. See you next time. Bye.